This is the Beyond Data Management podcast powered by HS GovTech. Now here's your host, Cameron Garrison.
Welcome back, everyone all across the H Nation. Beyond Data Management podcast powered by HS GovTech. I'm Cameron Garrison. We've got a fun conversation for you today. We're going to be going all the way out to Big Sky Country in Montana. And Alicia Love, who is the bureau chief for the Meat, Milk, Egg, and Inspection Bureau there at the Montana Department of Livestock, is going to be joining us. And she actually, for some time now, has been doing some lectures and seminars on conflict, escalation, and de-escalation, specifically as it relates to inspectors and the work that so many of you all do out there every day. And as you know, it's never a dull moment, and you have a lot of conflict to deal with. So that'll be our primary topic, but she also obviously runs an agency and a lot of other fascinating stuff to talk about. So welcoming in from Montana, Alicia Love. Hey, Alicia, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Really excited to have you here. So you're with the Department of Livestock. What sort of is that? Because Montana, obviously, it's a big agency, right? And so a lot of times, a lot of these programs would be under agriculture or environmental health in some cases. How are you structured there in Montana, and kind of what's the overview look like of the Department of Livestock and the inspections and vast things you all do?
Yeah, so Montana is pretty interesting in that we have a Department of Livestock. A lot of other agencies, you're correct, would be under a Department of Agriculture or a Department of Public Health. So we are actually a pretty small department, but we kind of house the livestock side of things. We've got brands, and then we've got our little pocket that I manage, which is our food safety. So we have a board of livestock. Our board of livestock has actually been in existence longer than Montana has been a state.
Wow.
And so we kind of answer to the board, and from there we've got our executive officer, our state veterinarian, and then down to the bureau chiefs.
So we have a picture, and this is probably a question you get asked a lot, and it's like asking somebody from the deep south about NASCAR, just assuming that what they've seen on TV is how you live. But I think we have a picture that I think when we hear Department of Livestock, that's the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind from Yellowstone. So first of all, are there livestock agents that carry guns? I assume they wouldn't behave like they do in the show, but is that also part of the Department of Livestock? Since I figured I'd get it out of the way up front, because I know a lot of people are going to be wondering based on images like that.
Yes, so we do have brands inspectors and brands investigators. That is not my group, but they are sworn peace officers. So yep, they do have that, but I don't think they have the fancy helicopter budget.
Yeah, that is a sweet helicopter on Yellowstone, the show. Just in case anybody missed the reference from that picture, I think it's so popular about everybody at least knows something about it now. How did you, so a lot of what you do there, though, is it's meat inspection, right? Plants, dairy, eggs. So it's stuff that a lot of the folks in the audience are generally familiar with, even if it would have been under a different department. One of the fascinating things about conversations on this channel is that so many of the leaders around the country in the regulatory public health field didn't aspire to it, and in some cases broke for it really, really late, sometimes even into their career. So I'm curious, how did you end up finding your way to what you're doing now, as it's not something that gets a lot of attention and a lot of people don't even know it exists?
Yeah, I kind of have a standing joke that most sanitarians start as doing something else, and then they wind up being a sanitarian.
Yep.
And I am no exception. I started out wanting to be in wildlife management. And unfortunately, I finished college in 2008 when wildlife management was not getting a lot of financial love. So I had to find something else. I ended up getting a job with vector control in Arizona. And when I got hired there, the trainer said, "Hey, you have a degree in biology." And I said, "Yes, I do. I don't know how that has anything to do with this." And she said, well, if you can pass this exam, you can become a sanitarian, and there's a pretty good raise associated with that title. And I said, okay, let's look at that. So that's how I broke into the inspection world, into the food safety world. I moved up to Montana 10 years ago now. And let's see here, in 2020, I guess it would have been, I was starting to want to branch out, want to look for something else. And there was a HACCP position within Department of Livestock, and I applied for that. And then when my predecessor retired, I stepped into that role. So that's how I'm here.
It gets in your blood, doesn't it? Because, whether it's accidental or did something else first, a lot of them, at least the ones we're talking to, are still here and moving through different titles, agencies. What is it that gets in your blood or captured you to when you were moving to Montana to not want to look at something different?
I really found a passion for the work. I found a passion for food in the weirdest of ways. We all have to eat, we all need food, and to be part of a system where we're keeping people safe, we're educating people. There's so many good operators out there that really do want to do the right thing, even if they're not sure how. And when I went into food safety, I just saw a lot of people who had a lot of passion to do the right thing. And I frankly had a lot of passion in just seeing how food was made, seeing how people, some of these restaurants have these huge traditional, like recipe catalogs, and that's what they're sharing with the public. So I came into it, and it kind of just latched into me. So I've never had a reason to leave since then.
That's excellent. And there's a lot of people with the same story. They stick with it. And we just need to get some more of them in younger. And then once they're in, you stick with it. So main topic we're here for. So you just actually, last week, by the time this is airing, did another, and you've done it more than once, a big webinar on conflict de-escalation. And, one of the most common things is that we'll get stories about, or people will say, hey, ask a guest about this or that. It really does. It revolves around those interpersonal, that regulatee relationship. So how did you come to realize that this was an important thing that wasn't really maybe being addressed or taught with resources? What caught your attention about it and caused you to invest a lot of time in thinking about this and talking about it?
Yeah. So when I first joined the Department of Livestock, I was the training officer for our meat inspectors, and we had not a very dangerous, but a very unfortunate interaction with one of our meat plants. And the plant ended up getting shut down over it for a short period of time. And so my boss at the time said, Alicia, we need to do training on conflict de-escalation. And I said, okay, sure, let me figure this out. And so I started researching it, and I started realizing that most of the de-escalation materials that were available at the time were really for law enforcement. It was all about like, hey, if you're a cop, here's how you de-escalate. And I said, okay, well, that doesn't work. We're not, we're not arresting people. We're not doing any of that. And so I really had to try and pull more civilian resources together, to find out how I could support my staff, how I could find out what we needed as an agency to have these interactions and keep everyone safe and keep things calm. And so I started incorporating that into my orientations with our staff. And then I actually ran into Dr. Hijack of NEHA at a Montana conference, and we got to talking about it, and he said, Alicia, we need to talk about this. More people need to know what to do. And that's really how this all started.
More people really do need to know, because there's a certain set of facts, whether you're in agriculture, EH, or at livestock or any related agency, you have an operator, right? It's generally permitted, and you're there to do the inspection to make sure they're complying, safe, and the permit terms, et cetera. So there's always a natural tension, right? What did you learn? Like at the high level, what did you learn that maybe we were doing wrong or just not even thinking about, knowing what the base setup to every story is going to be? Sometimes you're going to have to tell people things they don't like or close them down. What were we doing wrong, and where do you think we can evolve based on all the work you've done?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is recognizing how much of our conflict is biology based. We have our amygdala, that is a section of our brain that is intended to keep us safe. It's kind of scanning for that danger. And that's really where that adrenaline rush comes in when something scares us or makes us upset. And once that amygdala hijack takes place, our thinking, our reasoning brain kind of turns off while we're in that mode. And so the biggest thing that I can take away from it is having awareness of when that's going to happen. So you start to feel it, like we all know when it's happening. We don't feel good. We're shaking, our stomach hurts, whatever those cues are that your body gives you. And you're trying to be reasonable in a state when your brain isn't being reasonable anymore. So really the biggest takeaway that I have for people is taking time to walk away. We feel very pressured to stay in a conflict, even when your amygdala is activated, even when it's not productive anymore. And that rarely results in anything good happening. So stepping away, breathing it out, and then coming up with a game plan, a reasonable plan to say, okay, this is what we have to do. And then coming back to that person, and hopefully they've also had time to settle and having a conversation. So that's the big one for me.
And that it makes a lot of sense just from biology. But how do you tell people to go about doing that when they're actively there for the inspection? Hijinks ensues, temperatures raise. How do you step away in that environment? Like, are there some things you can say? Are there to buy yourself the time? How do you get out to get reset?
Absolutely. So I have one of two methods that I recommend for people. If you are a person where you're not afraid to kind of say, hey, this is where I'm at, I am fully on board with saying, you know what, it feels like the temperature is really high right now. I'm going to step away for a minute and recompose myself. If you're not comfortable saying that, then I'm a big fan of just, hey, make the excuse. Hey, my boss just called me. I need to step out and take this call. Or
Yeah.
I just remembered I got to do this thing right now, and I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Is there also some psychology baked in there that if they're really scared and that's why they're being confrontational, if you give them an excuse to step away that's about something else, I wonder if that almost makes them reevaluate, well, maybe the world's not ending. Like the only thing on his or her agenda today is not to shut me down.
I think that definitely can help. And even if they're not consciously recognizing that they're also escalated, just having that time away where they can just breathe and say, okay, the person is out of the room for a minute. I can reset. And something else that I talk about a lot in my training is being really conscious of your body language and kind of those cues that maybe you don't realize that you're giving off. So a big thing that I tell people is don't stand in a doorway when you're talking to people about regulatory enforcement, because subconsciously you're trapping that person in a room.
Interesting.
And that is going to escalate them. So making sure that they have a clear way out, even if you're not trying to trap them, but that is what their amygdala is going to say is, I am being trapped in this room with this person and now it's not safe anymore.
Wow. Yeah. That, again, it sounds almost simple logic when you actually think about it, but you don't really think about it a lot. I assume there's a difference, and it's probably hard to know how to tell, right? There's a difference between just a unpleasant confrontational situation or when it crosses that line to being potentially dangerous. And I assume that because this does happen, that there's probably a different checklist and path if you actually believe that the situation could be dangerous or about to get dangerous, right? Like that's different.
Absolutely, it is. So something that I talk a lot about as well is having that boundary. So if you are, whether they're outright threatening you or if you just are like, you know what, this person's really heated up and I don't think it's safe anymore, that is not a time to de-escalate. That is the time to leave. That is the time to call someone higher up. And in the presentation that I just gave, that was a really resounding theme. And a lot of the questions that I got were, I was in this really bad situation and I don't think I handled it right. And the answer was, you didn't handle it right, but not for the reasons you think. You needed someone else. You needed backup. You needed someone else to come in and help reinforce what was going on.
Is there, and I know it's probably different state to state, but where's that line? Like, because I'm sure if I'm an inspector, I don't want to be perceived as needy, right? I need my supervisor to complete my job, but that's the wrong way to look at it, right? Like, so when is it, are there some trends that somebody could spot to say, okay, we're heading towards a 2-man situation. I'm getting out of here for the day, going to go get reinforcements and we'll try again.
Absolutely. So something that I'm a firm believer in is that I do not mind people venting. I don't mind them being upset at the information that they're getting. When it becomes abusive, when it's just on and on and on, where you're just like, oh my gosh, this person is just ranting at me and there's no end in sight, that could be a time where it's like, okay, this person may not respond to de-escalation anymore. This might be that time. And it is hard to tell. And everyone has a different, I guess, tolerance for when they feel like it's not safe anymore. So when we get into that type of situation, I encourage them, if they're not sure, I encourage them to step out and say, hey, this is what's going on. Now, if you truly feel like you're beyond that point, it's time to go. Don't wait around for the call. Just go.
Yep, get out. And if you need 911, they're there too.
Absolutely.
So we get so many stories about this, and people ask guests and panelists about it. And maybe it's just always been this way, and I'm sure to a degree it is. But did this start to get more intense when the pandemic hit? Because I know there's a lot of industries that saw people just lose their minds, and perfectly nice people, but the stress changed them. Was that, from what you can tell, the general experience for regulators as well?
There's actually a good amount of research indicating that that's exactly what has happened in this realm, especially for people within public health. There's a lot of statistics out there now, looking back at 2021, showing that people who are in a public health industry, the majority of them have experienced at least one symptom of PTSD that's directly related to work. So there's a lot of research out there indicating that whether the public is changing or the nature of the work is changing, whatever it is, it's a much different environment since the pandemic.
And it also feels like burnout is worse, specifically for inspectors. And I have to think that a big part of that is the way some of the interactions have changed. It would stand to reason, right?
Absolutely. And I guess what I am hearing kind of here as a local perspective is that a lot of laws are changing that are less supportive of regulators doing the work that they need to do. And so people don't feel like they have the backup. They don't feel like they have the support or the authority to do the work they're doing. And so it kind of becomes, well, what's the point then? If I go out there and I'm trying to enforce it and I'm not going to get the backup I need, then why bother?
Yeah, and then it gets even reinforced because you actually touched on something that I think is really true. It was worse for public health because there was so much controversy and heat, and the general public doesn't know that the HHS in Washington, The people at a state or county Department of Health or Agriculture have nothing to do with any of that, but they ended up painting them with the same brush. It felt like, and like we had situations where it continues. So it's more current than the pandemic. There's a lot of reports out there that in certain cities, inspectors were getting refused entry for inspections or being squirrely with them because they thought that they were adjacent to ICE. And so there's just so many things, I think, culturally that they take out their fears and frustrations on the visible face of government, which is their local inspector who has nothing to do with it.
Wow. Yeah, I think maybe that's where Montana has a little bit of an advantage. We're pretty small, so most
Yeah.
people know who my staff are and what their roles are, but I can certainly see, in areas where inspections aren't as frequent or it's maybe a larger population, that could be really confusing and a new outlet for conflict, possibly.
Have you noticed on conflict, is there a type of facility or so? Because you've seen a wide range. So when you were down in Arizona with Department of Health and now in Montana, you've seen the gamut from meat processing plants, farms where dairy is produced, to restaurants of all types. Is there a certain profile? And I know because of humans, it's hard to, I would think, do this, but is there a certain type of industry or facility where people need to be more mindful about how they're presenting, because the type of people that they're going to be dealing with will take certain things a certain way? Or is it pretty much the same concerns across the board for all program areas?
I would say that the concerns are similar. Something that I definitely focus on with my meat inspectors is in a meat plant, you have a lot of dangerous equipment. A lot of them are stunning wildlife, or not stunning wildlife, stunning livestock with firearms. So there's firearms, there's knives, there's saws, there's a lot of stuff there capable of causing harm to an inspector. And so, their specific training is, if you're going to deliver bad news, maybe not the room where all the weapons are, maybe the office, maybe up front in the retail area, and we have really good meat plant operators. I don't worry about this specifically, but that is my guidance of just basic situational awareness. You don't want to be in a conflict with someone right next to where something can hurt you.
Yeah, a lot of weapon choices in a meat processing plant. So, David, I think we have one that we've talked several times, but we get a lot of feedback. Let's put one of them up here now. The longer one. Yeah, perfect. This one, I think, pick this one because it covers de-escalation, but also the burnout and just the grind of this. So for those that have video, they can see it. If you're on like a Spotify with audio only, I'll read it for them. So, struggling with people I interact with daily. This is from an inspector. I've been a government food safety inspector for about 8 months. I've worked in the regulatory industry for about 7 years. I had zero food safety experience prior to this job. I'm a social person, and I've enjoyed building relationships with my customers in the past. It's nice how they call them customers. As a food safety inspector, this seems nearly impossible aside from a select few. I hate the nervousness and the deceitfulness that I deal with on a daily basis. The lies are so blatant, it's insulting to think I'd even come close to believing them. I rarely have a conversation with people that feels genuine and not forced. It's exhausting some days. Does this get easier? Overall, I like the work, but this one aspect of it is difficult for me. I think you could almost sense, just coming off the words, just the frustration and stress that this person feels. This is maybe broader in de-escalation. Like, you get lied to a lot as an inspector, right? Like, it's part of the territory, isn't it?
It certainly can be. I think in this person's scenario, this is something that is challenging. It is really, really challenging to go into a place. You're not there very long. You don't have time to establish rapport with people to where they trust you, right? And so in situations like this, I'm really big on trying to start things off by not acting like a regulator. Hi, my name is Alicia. How is business going today? Or, I noticed, that you guys I don't know, maybe change something about the place. You have a new decoration on the wall. Like, try to find something positive to open with. That doesn't always fix it, but it at least gives you a moment to be more of a human and less of just the mask of regulation.
Almost like when you
And
take your kid to the doctor and they will kind of distract them and make them comfortable before giving them the shot, right? Like you're disarming the
yeah,
person preemptively in that situation, aren't you?
trying to, yeah, and I guess I think of it as more of a genuine thing. I do genuinely I want to work with these people. I want them to be successful. And if they have food issues, they're not going to be successful. So I really try to frame my time in the field as we are on the same team. I want you to succeed. If you don't know how to do something, I want to teach you how to do it. Or if you don't know this is dangerous, I want to explain why it is.
The inspector is
So
almost like free consulting if you look at them that way, right? And,
absolutely,
and they also know, like,
absolutely.
what they need to realize too is you want them to do poorly and have to come back almost just as little as they do, right? Because you already don't have enough people to keep up with your inspection load, and having to do a mandatory reinspection is bad for you too.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. So in cases like this where they're saying really brazenly wrong and they're trying to make excuses or they're trying to kind of cover it up, I really do try to go back to it's not just that there's a rule, there's a bacteria, there's a virus, there is something there that can harm your clients that is now at stake because of what I'm seeing. And so I really try to make it less about just I'm writing you up just for the sake of writing you up to I'm trying to make you better. I'm trying to make your business safer. I try really, really hard when I am dealing with an operator who doesn't know me well to say, look, I want to help you. I want to answer your questions. I want to provide education. I want to do whatever I can to make this better for your business. So if that means I come back and I do a separate sit down meeting where you just ask me questions, I have done trainings for restaurants in the past, and those were actually really cool because then the staff were actually asking me about some of their home practices and saying, wait, I do this at home. Is that safe for me and my family? And so they were really able to take a personal connection to the work of what they were doing in a restaurant and say, wait a minute, this might be bigger than just my job.
Yeah, it's really smart. One of the other things I thought when I was reading that comment from the listener is I think it underscores also why what you're doing is so important, because I think part of what, again, not trying to read too much into it, but had only been doing food for 8 months, so was new. And it kind of felt to me like no one even told her what to expect or given her the tools, right? So I thought that one also just really encapsulated this is really needed, isn't it? Like, to get people prepared, because the shock value alone can bum you out.
That is something that I found to be really astounding is that when I started in food safety regulation, it was all about the food code, it was all about the pathogens of concern, it was all about cooking temperatures and hand washing time. There wasn't an orientation piece that talked about dealing with potentially angry people. And so it is a little bit shocking. And when I came over to livestock, the existing orientation doesn't talk about how to deal with people. It's all about what are the laws, what are the regulations. And so it's something that's really, really lacking.
It is. It's shocking. It feels like that, and how to handle when someone tries to basically bribe you are the two things that they encounter, if not regularly, semi-frequently. And it just never gets talked about. They're almost left to fend and figure it out for themselves when it happens. So this is really, really needed. And so we'll put your actual training and webinar links in the description to this episode. And if there's any other collateral material or links for you that you want us to have in there on this topic, let us know, and we'll put all of those in there so that folks, I suspect you'll hear from the folks, because it really is. It's a topic that everybody struggles with, but no one's really taken the time before you to say, let's do something about it. And I'm not surprised at all that meeting with Dr. David Hijack was part of that evolution, because that's them being active and helping to highlight these things is really important and exciting to see. So I know, let's take a quick plug break for a second here. So if you're watching this now, actually, while this one is being watched, I'll be in Montana at the public health conference there in Billings from the Monday through Thursday this week. So hope to see some of you all there. And then week after that, the 20th through the 23rd of April, we'll be in Long Beach, California, speaking at the CHA, California Environmental Health Association Conference. And it's travel season, not just for me, but for you too, right? I think there's a couple of things that you've got coming up that folks should make note of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming up in August is the National Environmental Health Association conference, and I will be joined by Dr. Lucy Houghton, and we are doing a 4-hour pre-con training just about conflict de-escalation. So it's going to be 4 hours of in-depth, really refining how to handle people. So I know most of us just look right at the agenda. We don't want to go to the conference any earlier than possible, but if you have some time and you'd like to learn more about this, that would be a great opportunity.
Definitely 4 hours. You can cover a good bit in that period of time, but do it. And I'm really glad that you pointed it out, because a lot of times the pre-conference stuff, I don't know what it is. The brain, you think of the main dates advertised, and you don't pay attention and you book the flight so you can't go to it. But I'm going to be circling it because I think I'm getting in a couple days early and get to see you there in person as well. There was something else that you've worked on that I don't know much detail about, but was very curious, is workforce and hybrid optimization. Does that ring a bell? I may have said it wrong, but working on hybrid workforce innovation. No, okay,
that one's not familiar to me.
Okay, so there's either another one. So see, we get things wrong sometimes. So never mind. I thought it was like that would be a different path. So I was going to ask you about it. Never mind. So you've been obviously in the field, and you worked down in the Phoenix area before Big Sky Country. What you've been out there, so you've done what the inspectors that are watching this have done. It's why you put together this class, because you knew it was needed. What do you have any, though, really crazy, funny, sad if it has to be told, but stories, both from an inspector's perspective in the field, like whether it's violation or just craziness you observed, and then if you happen to have one too, where you had kind of a crazy escalated situation at some point in your career. Love to hear any of them, not to put you on the spot, but that's always fun to hear real experience and the crazy stuff.
Yeah, so I'd say as an inspector, I really wanted to kind of get myself out in the field, start to see stuff. And so when I was new, the area I was training in was actually very clean and had really good operators, so I wasn't seeing very much. And so I told the trainer, I said, I want to go to bad places. I want to go to places that have rough histories, because I feel like I'm not learning when I'm not writing anything up. And so she put out an email and said, Alicia's offering to take your scary places, so here's your chance to get out of it. And we had a restaurant that had a pretty good history of cockroach infestations, and it was a problem. So we went out there, and I wasn't seeing them. I was like, they've got to be here. Like, every inspection has had just tons of cockroaches, so it has to be here somewhere. And so we went through all the back, and then they kind of had a bar area where people could like sit and eat, and they had a hand washing sink. And so I was looking under that, and I opened it, and there they all were. And there's people sitting at the counter, and I'm trying, like, I don't want to embarrass the operator. I don't want to make a big scene. And so I was trying to be very discreet, and I was like, hey, can you come look at this? Like, trying to be very quiet. And he was frustrated with me being there. He didn't want me there. And he was like, what is it? And he was talking very, very loudly. And I'm like looking at his customers, and I'm really trying hard to be like, can you please just can you please just come over here and look at this? Can I just show you this so I don't have to say this? And he was not taking the hint. He was not listening to what I was trying to do at all. And so I finally had to say, like, you have a lot of cockroaches under your sink here. And I'm trying to say it quietly. And he starts yelling about it. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying so hard not to make this an issue. And he didn't take it at all. I felt bad. Like, his customers were definitely a little bit disturbed. And I just felt bad. I was like, I didn't know how else to manage the situation or what to do with him.
And you asked for the situation.
I did. I was not prepared.
Well, if they had that many roaches, he surely knew, right? So maybe he was conveniently pretending not to. He had to have known. So
who knows?
They weren't happy to see you there. Sorry, I think you were going to another one.
No, you're good. I think my next one that I think about really often was an establishment that I regularly inspected. I was assigned to that area, and I actually got a complaint because they were next to a tattoo parlor, and the tattoo parlor made the complaint because the restaurant was stealing their mops. And they said, this isn't safe. Like, we're dealing with blood, we're dealing with these different chemicals. We've tried to buy them their own mops. And so it's just really interesting to have I don't know. I mean, people have their interpretations of what a tattoo shop is.
Yeah, that's true. And it varies.
It does. And so it's just really interesting talking to them and then talking to this restaurant about the issue. And it was just one of those things it just kind of lives rent free in your brain of like, wow, that was really weird.
Why were they stealing the mops? Did they give you an explanation?
Not really. They had kind of an alleyway where both businesses kind of dried their mops. So it's Arizona, it's hot, and I just think it was carelessness. They would just grab whatever mop was around, and the tattoo parlor was very worried about. They were worried about people getting sick, and they said we would get blamed. The tattoo parlor would get blamed. If some kind of bloodborne outbreak happened.
You get a hepatitis or something, and that's bad for their business. That's crazy. But good for them for calling the complaint in. And I guess since you mentioned complaints, is there a particular interaction that is more prone, from your experience, to trigger a tough situation? Is complaints worse, for example, because somebody that they think maybe is a competitor called up and said stuff about them? Inspections, re-inspections, is there a higher risk kind of interaction than others?
I think where we see more conflict with complaints is when people get really set on wanting to know who ratted them out, right? They're like, oh, was it my neighbor? Was it this other business? Like, I know it was them, and we don't share that. We're not supposed to share that. And so that in and of itself can be the escalation. It's not even that a complaint exists. It's that they want to know who called, and they get really upset by that.
Yeah, which makes sense if somebody's attacking their business or they think they are. And I guess actually ways to put them at ease would be to tell them, hey, like, not to the way you carry yourself, almost assume the complaint's true, right? Because I know that you probably have gone on a lot yourself where you show up and you're like, no idea what this person called this in for. And the internet also makes it easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had... We will get that. You will get like a competing business or something that does want to complain just for the sake of making their neighbor's life hard. And we get out there and there's really nothing to see. And so I think if you can frame it of, yes, we got a complaint, but we're just going to check it out. Like I've had plenty of complaints where I couldn't validate what the complaint was. Disgruntled employees that have been fired will make complaints. Then you show up and you're like, there's nothing here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's actually a couple of instances of it already happening, but with AI, I think it's going to get trickier because people could literally go create a video that is indistinguishable and then attach it to their complaint. Like the ability to fabricate is getting scarily easy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's, I say this not so much in an AI sense, but, something that I tell my establishments a lot is we cannot take enforcement on something unless we can prove it. So that is kind of a way that I put businesses at ease of like, if you have a question, even if you're not doing the right thing, like if I don't see this happening, I can't do anything. So I kind of say that to encourage people. Like, if I think I'm doing something wrong, it's not going to get me in trouble until the inspector sees it. So just call me, ask me, let's figure it out. Let's get ahead of it so you don't get in trouble.
And if they take you up on that and call, that's de-escalation in of itself, right? Because now you've got a relationship, and people don't yell at somebody they know or feel like they know personally more than the inspector cop. And is there's probably how you carry yourself, right? It's important if you want them to believe that they can call you and ask you things. It's probably pretty important of how you present yourself from interaction one, right? And not as I'm over you, I have power over you, but a human having a conversation. I'm here to help. Yep, I'm going to uphold every law or every ordinance that I have to, but that's not what makes my day. Some people could be a little Barney Fife-ish, if I can date myself with the reference, right? But you don't really want to give off that sort of strict disciplinarian cop kind of vibe at all, do you?
No, not at all. And I think that's where the small talk at the beginning of the interaction can happen. Finding something positive to say about the business helps that, right? Like it's not just finding the negative. And I think that is really one of the hardest things as a regulator is that you're going into these businesses over and over and over again, potentially sharing bad news every single time you see this person. And so they have an association of like, great, this person's here, it's going to cost me time, it's going to cost me money, it's going to make my day harder. So if you can go in and find something good to say, it really carries a lot of weight. Something that I try, and I'm not in the field as much as I used to be, but when I was in the field, if I told them they needed to fix something and they did fix it, I tried to make a really conscious point of being like, hey, I see you. I see what you're doing. I see that that you did that, and thank you. I thought of another good story for you.
All right.
So I had a business that I inspected, and they usually did pretty good. They were a pretty good restaurant, not very many violations. And the manager of the restaurant, I came in one day, and he said something that I don't think too many people have ever heard as an inspector. He said, "I'm happy to see you today." And I said,
wow.
Okay, that's weird. Why? And he said, "I need your help with something." And I said, okay. And he tells me that they had this little ice cream cooler, and it was from the brand of the ice cream. And he said he hated it. He said the thing constantly gave him issues, and he just didn't like it. And he said, corporate will get rid of this if you write me up for it. And I said, okay, you're asking me to write you up. That's also strange. And so I looked it over, and I noticed that part of the handle was kind of chipped. And in a normal inspection, I would not have written this. It was barely chipped. But I said, okay, because that handle's broken, it's not easily cleanable. So I'm going to write you up for it not being easily cleanable.
That and is you. Time, wow, you never get asked to write a violation. That's crazy.
So I showed up next time, and he had a very nice little ice cream freezer, and he was really happy. He said he sent that thing in right away, and they said, okay, buy a new one. So it was awesome. A win for him.
You actually helped him get something done. So yeah, you're not going to have trouble with him going forward for sure. That's excellent, and good thinking on your feet to find a chipped handle. Because yeah, you would normally never really write that, right? Like it's why. Meat plants, that's a tough environment for an inspector, right? Because you've got the team you lead is stationed in processing plants, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we have about 17 meat inspectors. So they are in our state meat plants every day that they operate.
Wow. What's that like? What do they do if they're in there every day? Because a lot of the public or people who haven't been in that program would we could assume what it looks like? What are they doing in there all day, every day?
So it kind of depends on what's going on that day. So if the plant is slaughtering animals, we are there for the entire duration of slaughter. So they're going to look at all the animals before they get killed, make sure they all look healthy, make sure there's no neurological issues going on with those animals. And then once the animals are stuck and bled, then we actually do organ inspections on different parts of the animal to make sure that there wasn't infection or other diseases that could carry over through the food.
That's a bloody job. Like I
Yes.
assume there's some people that couldn't do that job, right? Just because that having to watch animals be butchered and things like that would not be good for them.
We've definitely had some people in the past that have quit. You know, we try to get them out on the kill floor pretty early after hiring. And we've had some people say, you know what, this isn't for me, and that's okay. You know, there's jobs out there I know I couldn't do. So no hating on it at all. And then on processing days, we would look at different things. So we might watch cooking, or we might watch, we might watch like how something is being put together to make sure that the label matches what the ingredients are. So it's a really different system than restaurant inspections. With restaurant inspections,
It's just one
you're trying to look at
snapshot.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing deep dives because you're there every day. Just curious question comes to mind. Who pays for it? I mean, obviously I know it's the Montana, but is that covered budgetarily from some type of fee or something that the plants they're permitting? Is it like a lot of the other permitted and inspected things where that revenue is generated from the facilities?
We are actually kind of the opposite of that. So the majority of my budget is actually federal and state taxpayer dollars.
Right on.
So when meat inspection was set up, the perspective was that this is a service to the public. The public is wanting a safe food supply, and so the public should pay for the service. So our budget is supposed to be 50% federal and 50% state taxpayer
Yeah, so like
dollars.
at USDA, and you're dealing with all of those. And then so I think dairy, we know, like you got the plant, you got the farm where it comes from, but the eggs. What's the egg program look like there in Montana?
Yeah, so our egg program is pretty small in Montana. We do have a big egg grading facility up in Great Falls, so we have egg graders there. Again, all hours of production, they're grading eggs. And in that case, the plant is actually paying for that.
Okay, yes. So on the meat, probably been worth it like this. They're there if they get a lab result back or something, or they just see something. Like, are they empowered to hold the line? Like, what? Or do they have to go talk to somebody? How does that work if they're like, this can't go on a moment longer?
Yeah, so depending on what the issue is, so we do routine sampling, and then the plant also does sampling. So when we collect a sample, that lot gets held until we get the results back. And then once the lab says, yep, there's nothing on here, then they clear it. But if it comes back and there is something, then the plant has the option to try to make it safe, or if they can't, then that product just has to get discarded. So oftentimes our bigger issues are with raw product. So then the plant can say, okay, well, then we're going to cook it here and make sure that it has a very high cooking point to make sure that we deal with whatever was tested in the product.
Yeah, so they know they're not shipping it with that in it. And I would assume that they're there, there's more of a relationship there, right? Because they're coming to work every day just like everybody else in there. And so that probably makes it easier from a conflict arm wrestling standpoint.
It's kind of a mixed issue because my inspectors are seeing their plant more than they see their boss, more than they see me. And so I think not all the time, but sometimes it can actually be harder for them because it's like these are the people I
Hmm.
see, and now I'm having to give them bad news. So it's
Oh, yeah.
kind
So
of
they
keeping
actually,
that line.
to not become part of the herd, no pun intended, right? Because you're right. That's their
Exactly.
workplace. Those are their colleagues, at least
Exactly.
practically. Hadn't thought about that. Is there safeguards that an agency like yours can put in place to help them be aware of boundaries that might not even feel like anything at the moment they pass them?
So we talk about a lot when people are hired, just really small things like, hey, when you take your lunch break, don't go hang out in the lunchroom with the people you're regulating. Like go on your own, go do your own thing. The supervisors are supposed to be in the plant, on occasion. We do a deep dive assessment on the plants every couple of years, and then I also just kind of monitor what violations are being written, how often violations are being written. So I do a little bit of kind of statistical analysis. So when I start to see kind of a dip, it's like, hey, what's
Yeah.
going
Are
on?
you
Like,
going?
is the plant really getting better, or is something else happening?
Yes. And actually, that's such a great thing to do because even in the EH space, you can see a lot of trends from that, can't you? You also can tell, oh, you're a floors, walls, and ceiling person. Everybody has their thing, right? And they
Yes.
have to like get them to open their mind to the other things that maybe they're not as into on that. How do you like Montana? So I love to go up there. I get to go up there again, like in the next couple of days. Um, is that your forever home, or what's life like?
It's it is so it is so hard for me. I've lived all over the country. I've obviously I grew up in a desert. Montana is very much so not a desert.
No.
So there's a lot of charm to Montana. But there's hard stuff too. We're not exactly known for having a great restaurant scene or entertainment scene. So if
Yeah.
you're wanting a night out on the town, you're kind of limited on what you can do. But I do like that it's smaller. I like that it's quieter. So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate that my morning commute is like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's nice. You don't get that in Atlanta or Phoenix or places like that. So if you, I'll ask you this sort of in closing, if it's a weird scenario, but if you, for whatever reason, were told you can't do the regulatory work anymore in ag health, livestock, but you can pick anything else in the world you want to do or be. Is there something that you'd be like, oh my
Ooh.
gosh, this is a good thing? Is there any other passion out there that you would maybe be okay if you had to leave this?
I mean, let's just say bills are going to be paid no matter what. Uh,
Right
let's
on.
go, let's go with like a critic for Broadway musicals. If someone
Oh,
wanted to pay me to watch Broadway musicals and critique them, I'd do that happily.
that's Broadway's great. Have you been up there? Have you seen a bunch on Broadway? Yeah, of course you have. That's is Phantom closed, right? I saw Phantom back when it was playing every day there. Um,
Yeah.
and of course Hamilton. What did you think of Hamilton? I,
I loved
I did
Hamilton.
too.
Hamilton was
Amazing.
spectacular.
That soundtrack, especially first couple of years after it was out, I'd put that on the iPhone and play the soundtrack when I was out. Yeah, Hamilton was awesome. That would be a really fun job, and you get to critique all the prima donnas on stage that need to check back to size. That would be more fun than inspecting probably plants and things. I really appreciate you coming on. I know you've got other commitments. Folks, don't forget. So at the pre-conference at NEHA, 4 hours of deconfliction training. If you haven't done the courses she's already done, go to that one. But we'll also drop a link in the description here below of the course that's online that NEHA streamed of the deconfliction course that she did, so that you all can all look at that and see it. And I'd highly recommend that you do because she's thinking about the things that are annoying you or stressing you every single day. So Alicia, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was excellent, and I really appreciate this chance to talk with everyone.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you again. For all of us here, that is it for the day at the Beyond Data Management Podcast. I'm Cameron Garrison. Have a great, safe week. Deconflict, deconflict, deconflict. And we'll see you next Tuesday.